How do you see yourself nowadays?
Older.
I don't know if we can be trusted with such a weapon.
Besides the nuclear experiment that we're seeing inside the movie, there's another experiment going on behind the scenes. And I'm talking about using the IMAX format. Because usually you use that to show panoramic views or to communicate big things. But for this movie, you're using that to film psychology. And that means you're centered on a human when you're using the biggest camera on Earth. And that blows my mind. What did you discover after working with this?
Well, my director of photography, Hoyte van Hoytema, and myself, we've worked with the IMAX format for years, mostly for action, for spectacle, as you point out. And for this film, we knew that it would give us the desert landscapes, the landscapes of New Mexico. We knew that it would give us the extraordinary build-up to the Trinity test and the test itself. But what Hoyte and myself became interested in was, can that tool help us to climb inside his head? I wanted to tell the story through Cillian Murphy's eyes playing Oppenheimer. And what we found is that the IMAX format is equally immersive and radical when it comes to intimate situations. Feeling like you're there in the room with these people as they wrestle with some of the most dramatic and important questions of our time. It was a really interesting and engaging use of the format, and I hope where people have the chance to see it on a very large screen, they'll take that chance.
Well, first of all, Hoyte is just a genius, and himself and Chris have this kind of symbiotic relationship. They can almost finish each other's sentences, and they have such an amazing understanding. Yeah, I mean, it was such a bold move to try and show someone's interior world on the biggest possible format, and I think they succeeded. And they also developed this black and white film that had never been used before, never existed before for the black and white segments. I think it works. You have to get used to this huge camera coming at you, and it makes a terrific noise as well. But that's just Chris, always kind of pushing the boundaries and kind of stretching what you can do within the language of film, and that's why he is the master that he is.
There is a moment in the movie around the nuclear test.
Yeah.
You go from fear and uncertainty to euphoria and then to devastation.
Yeah.
And all those radical changes made me think how you prepared, absorbed, and evolved after portraying a character like Oppenheimer.
Well, there was a huge amount of prep, and research. Chris gave me the script like 6 months out from shooting, so we had a long time. I would have taken more if it was available. And then when we actually got into the shoot, it was so fast. Like, we shot in 57 days, we were all over the States, and it was kind of like a whirlwind. I actually can't remember a huge amount about it. It was so intense. And then afterwards, you're exhausted but satisfied. I felt that we had done something special, that's what I felt.
Was it difficult for you to leave the character behind?
I don't know about that. I mean, you'd probably have to ask my family about that. But listen, I think if you do anything for like 17 hours a day for like 8 or 9 months, and then you stop abruptly, then you're going to have all of this displaced energy naturally, and it's very hard to kind of adjust back into normal life. But I mean, that's our job.
I love you both.
Thank you.
I have to say. But for you, Emily, hats off to the way you build up your explosiveness in this movie. Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Than't you.
So you're actors. You prepare and you study for your roles. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you become experts on the subject that you're portraying. But I know that for Oppenheimer, you had to arrive on set every day with a precise and specific knowledge where you're going to contribute to a meeting, to an experiment, to a discussion. For you, that you have already like a legacy and you've worked with a lot of directors, that's a different thing. So what can you tell me about your experience on working with this mentality, with this dynamic?
It really is all about the director. It really is 100%. And in our case, the director was also the writer. And so the script was so good and so clear. And so it was about going every day, and the first thing we do is go sit with Chris and talk to him, discuss in kind of broad terms what his expectations were for the scene. And then he really gives you room to do it. His notes are great, so after you do a take, he'll come up and give you something very specific and simple to make an adjustment. It feels effortless working with a director who's that good.
Yeah, completely. I think it's that he has such enormous, endless capabilities, and so you just want to try to match any vision he has, any nuance he's after from you. And so everyone just came with their kind of game-ready faces on. I feel every day people were just so prepared and dialed in and focused. And I think everyone wants to impress Chris. Everyone just wants to make him happy. It's like making Dad. Papa, can you hear me? It's like trying to make Dad really happy. He's everyone's dad, and he's the same age as you. But you're like, Daddy.
Did I do good, Daddy?
Did I do good, Daddy?
I like to think that the research and the subjects that you have shown in your other movies prepared you for Oppenheimer. For example, Inception, the examination of the mind, and you have the psyche here of Oppenheimer. Or in Interstellar, the limits of the universe, the limits of the bomb. In Dunkirk, Second World War, agony, dehumanization, the terrible possibility. We see that also in Tenet and here. Or in Memento, the transition between black and white and color. What can you tell me about having Christopher Nolan's evolution after making these movies and getting in this one as a bigger man, a bigger filmmaker?
Well, I think you try and take on the stories when you feel ready, when you feel that you have the necessary skills to tell the story. And Oppenheimer for is no exception. And as you rightly point out, there are all kinds of things in my work to date that lead me to this place and give me the confidence to try and make this story work. A lot of the examples you used, absolutely, and then very specifically with Tenet, there is a reference to Oppenheimer, and it was a realization for me as I finished that film that really that film is about the yearning or the desire for there to be some way to uninvent something awful that's been invented. And in finishing that film and dealing with the reality that obviously that's not possible in the real world, then let's look at the story that inspired that fear in me in the first place, or that desire in me in the first place.
You've worked with Christopher Nolan before.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about that Cillian Murphy from almost 20 years ago with Batman Begins.
Yeah.
And how do you see yourself nowadays?
Older. I feel really privileged to have worked with Chris for this long. I mean, he's changed my life creatively and professionally. I've learned more from him than I have from any other director, and I feel very proud to have been in 6 of his films, because I think they're some of the best films of the last 30 years,
The practical effects in every Christopher Nolan movie, we are always expecting something bigger and bigger. And I want to ask you on your perspective, like being on set, even if you're not acting there, but you're like watching the effects or just know that what's going to happen. How did you feel about that? Like talking specifically about the bomb.
It's very helpful as an actor because you totally immerse yourself in the world because he builds the world for you, right? And so everything becomes easier as an actor. But more importantly, it's because he knows that not only does it make it better for you and your performance, it makes the audience can feel it. There are ways in which the audience, whether they can identify or not, like there's sometimes you just look at something and you go, it's just a feeling you get. That was real or that wasn't real. And because it's all real and it's all captured in camera, that's why people love his movies. Even if that's why I love his movies. Even if I can't exactly identify, I'm like, I don't know how he did that. I don't know, but that was real. Like that was not an effect.
I mean, Chris believes strongly in practical effects. I mean, all the films that I've ever done with him, there's never been a green screen once, and he put me on the side of a upturned boat in the ocean in Dunkirk, and we were up on a mountain in Canada, like in a snowstorm in Inception. So he just, he believes that the actor responds, the performer responds to the environment, and you get a truer performance. And I think he's right. And he also thinks, and I think he believes that you don't have an emotional connection to CGI. And I think he's right there too. And like for this explosion, he wanted the horror of it and the kind of beauty of it to feel real. And you're only going to get that with practical effects.
I have to tell you, I was very excited when they announced that you were going to be the protagonist of a Christopher Nolan movie. And I can speak for myself and for a lot of people. We were so proud of seeing you in the lead role. Like, that's amazing.
Oh, great. Thank you for that.
There's a very impressive scene between Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Then when you see that, and when you realize what's going on, you feel shocked, you're speechless after that.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you about that impact, that scene.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary piece of writing by by Chris. I mean, the whole film kind of hinges on that, and what it does to, you know, Robert Downey Jr.'s character, how that affects him, this kind of, what if he feels that he's been slighted, and yet that's enough to destroy a man. It's kind of unbelievably brilliant writing. And I also think, you know, a lot of films fail on their endings, and I think this film has an extraordinary ending, and so satisfying, and Chris does endings like nobody else, like the ending of Inception. You know, he's a master at that.
In Oppenheimer, we witness how the creation of something, in this case the atomic bomb, it starts with a vision, it has a purpose, but when somebody else uses that, everything changes, and they can use it for whatever they want. And I was thinking about, if you translate that to when you're making a movie, it's yours, it's your story, and you give it to the audience decides how they read that movie, how they want to use it. How do you feel in that moment when you have to let go and it belongs to the world?
I feel very excited and also very nervous, because what I've learned over the years is that the audience finishes the film. And the film is not done until it's gone to the widest possible audience. And over time, over the release of the film, they complete it, they tell you what it is, they define that experience. But I make a film for audiences, that's what I do. And so I have to embrace that process.
Yeah.
But I always approach it with excitement. You know, it's like a performance or something, but also nervousness. You're not quite sure what people are going to make of it and what it will become.
I have to wrap, but thank you so much. It's
you.
a true honor.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks so much.
Congratulations.
Thank
So nice
you.
to meet you.
So nice to meet you.